Hi everybody, today's video is going to be something I haven't done before. So up until fairly recently I was a volunteer in a replica 1940 sweet shop, which I hope to go back to. So in order to do that, I was dressing the part, so I'll be showing you some of the things that I use. So it's a handbag, a bit like the Queen and Margaret Thatcher's handbag, if you like. This I bought in a charity shop somewhere, I can't remember. So other things like I obviously wear different glasses, so I'll just try and stand this up so it doesn't slide everywhere. So these are my glasses, which you will see in a photo of me, very Harry Potter-ish. So this was the best I could get to hide them away in a fairly periodish case. So then I carry other little tins around with me. So that's one for gramophone needles, and then I've got another one that's a first aid tin, and I keep my hair grips and my modern elastic in to put my hair up so that nobody can see it floating around in my bag. And then this other tin's just got nothing in it, if you can see. It's just empty. It's just one I picked up from somewhere. Other than that, I've got a purse that's kind of in keeping, and I haven't managed to find any pre-decimal notes that I can print out, but I have got some old money. So there's a 1p piece which is dated 1938. There's this sweet shop, bear in mind, is 1940, so there's a threepenny bit there from 1945, and then we've got a halfpenny from, I can't read what that says, I think it's slightly later, but it was the best I could get. Then we have a farthing from 1946 and a sixpence, or a tanner as people used to call it. So I will be adding to those, so they all go in there. And as far as documentation is concerned, I managed to find this ration book holder, and I think the character on the front is something to do with sugar, and obviously there's a place for you to write your name and address in. Now, for the purposes of reenacting the part I do in the sweet shop, I've taken my maternal grandmother's name, and this address still exists, and it was her parents-in-law. So she lived with them both before and after the war. Before the war, when my granddad was called up, and after a while she went back to her parents in the north, in a town called Bedlington, where she stayed until Grandad was demobbed in 1947. So I've obviously got her ration book supplement. I can't find an adult adult replica ration book. They're all children's ones, so I'm going to have to try and find some way of making my own. So that's obviously got her details on the front. And then there was you also had to have a supplementary clothing book, so this was again using her details, and that was where the local food and rationing office was. It actually existed in that place. And then finally we've got a national registration identity card. This is an adult one because the children's one say children under 16 on the front, and again I've put the address that she was using at the time that would have been relevant. So the sweet shop that they've got in the museum is obviously because they were the last things to come off the ration. So that's all my bits and pieces. I also carry, if you can see it, a shopping basket, and in here I've got some dishcloth wool and some needles for whiling away those hours in the air raid shelter. This is a children's gas mask container, again because I can't find a bigger one. And then this is a notebook, but because it's got the old-fashioned style penguin book covers, I thought it would do as a book. So if anybody saw it in my basket, they would just assume that's what it was. And then I've got a thing here about the Battle of Britain, because there was all sorts of propaganda that was issued. And then the other thing is a newspaper, which is the Final Night Extra from June the 6th, 1944. So that's that. And then as for what I wear while I'm working in the shop, I've got this dress which I picked up from the Retro Festival, which you may have heard me talking about before, because it was the right length for rationing. And then a wrap-round pinafore dress, and on the front of it there are two badges there. So the first one is the wartime issue Women's Institute badge. I'm not sure that my maternal grandmother was in the Women's Institute because of moving about so much, but my paternal grandmother was, so I wear that for her. And the other one is what was called a sweetheart badge. Some of them had little photos hanging on the bottom. My nan's one did, so I'm going to try and do something to replicate that. And this was because my maternal grandfather was in the 43rd Royal Tank Regiment, and he was sent to India in 1945, and he was actually just going down the Suez Canal when they dropped the bombs in Japan. This is my turban that I wear to keep my hair in order. And finally I've got a coat that's a fairly long line, although not too long, and it's made to look like a camel hair coat that I would have had quite a long time because of things being on the ration. And then the last thing is shoes. So these were the best I could find. So they're not, strictly speaking, Oxfords. They're not brogues either. They're kind of in the middle. So, and they're surprisingly comfortable, bearing in mind they've got block heels. And then as far as wearing nylons are concerned, I buy those from a company called Snags, and they don't fall down, so you don't end up with them down around your knees, and you also don't end up looking like Nora Batty. So yeah, that's what I wear when I'm reenacting a shop assistant in the 1940s sweet shop.